What's up, everyone? As you all know, the World Championships are upon us. Day one took place yesterday. I'm recording this in the morning of part two of round one. So here's the big question: who will be crowned world champion? And in my opinion, there are a few key contenders. And what I plan to do through this video is walk you guys through the draw and what some of the key matchups are going to look like, and then share some things that you guys can think about or look for when you're watching some of the matches to see who will emerge triumphant. So here we go. This is the draw. We're looking only at the men's draw over here. Look how massive it is on the left. I took this screenshot before day one took place, so none of the winners from round one from the top half of the round one have been input here. I wanted to show this for the scale and magnitude of what this event looks like and the level of competition, the depth of competition. And then what we're going to do is we're going to look at each quarter of the draw. So for example, you see this red square over here. This is the top quarter, and the second image is a zoomed up version of this top quarter. And then what we're going to do is I'm going to give you who I think is going to proceed, and then for any of the key matches I'm going to share some things to look for when you're actually watching the match. So out of this top quarter, it's already pretty strong. As you know, by the time you're watching this video, these matches would have taken place. And out of here I see Ali Farag coming through into round three for sure. He'll have to play Miguel, but I don't think that Miguel is playing at the same level at the moment to really challenge Ali Farag that much. In the bottom of this quarter, you have Omar Mossad likely. I mean, he has some tough matches. George Parker could be a tough match because Mossad as well isn't playing his best. I think he's a little bit past his prime, but you never know, right? You never know what's going to happen. This could be tough, but I think Mossad will come through and play Diego. And I feel that Diego is going to come out on top of that match. So then the question is, what's going to happen in the Farag versus Diego match, assuming that things line up the way we're anticipating over here? Well, from their last 10 matches, Farag has won the last 9 of them, and Diego hasn't beaten Farag in about 4 years now. And their overall record is 12-2, but to me, it's really telling how their last several matches have actually proceeded. Now, knowing that, I've listed a couple of things that I think we should really look for when this match plays out. So the first thing, Diego is coming off of some injuries. He hasn't been playing that much recently, so I don't know what his fitness is going to be like. And in general, Diego's fitness has been sort of suspect. So to play someone like Farag, who is a phenomenal mover, phenomenal retriever, who is willing to absorb but also apply pressure, you have to have a high enough fitness level to be able to sustain that, to counter it, to defend when you need to, and then to have enough energy to actually implement and execute the attacks effectively. So Diego's fitness is number one. And then the other factor to look at from Farag's side is his aggression on the tee. You know, in the more recent match against Shorbagy in the World Tour Finals a few weeks ago, Farag was not initiating that much. He was being fairly passive in his gameplay. So if he comes out with that same sort of mindset, Diego does have a pretty good attacking game and he can finish the ball as long as his fitness is up to scratch and he's not made to run around a lot. This could be a pretty interesting match. So, you know, both players have a great game. It's just whether Diego can go the distance against Farag and whether Farag will be aggressive enough. I'm anticipating that Farag will probably come through this match against Diego. And then knowing that, let's jump into the second quarter of the event. So over here you have a pretty strong section with Marwan. The seeded players are Marwan, Gregoire, Marche. James Willstrop actually lost to Youssef Ibrahim yesterday, who was playing phenomenally well. It was a very close match. And then Tarek, Momen. So there are a lot of good matches in this section. So let's check out what the Youssef Ibrahim Tarek Momen match might look like. And the last time they played was in 2019, so it's been a while. And Youssef Ibrahim's game has increased and improved significantly since then, in my opinion. And Tarek Momen, in his recent performances, has not been playing his best squash, again, in my humble opinion. The last time they played was in 2019, and Momen won in 4, but it was pretty close. So the things that I would encourage you to look at when Momen is playing, and his round one performance is not really a good indicator of how he's going to play against tougher and stronger players. Generally, players don't play their best in round one because they kind of feel out the event. They feel out their game. They try to settle themselves in because typically the player they're playing against is not at the same level. So you don't see their best squash. In round two, Momen is going to have to step up his level against Ibrahim because he's actually playing very well. So the things to look at based on Momen's recent performances are how good his basic game is. So I found that he's not getting his length and width as accurately as he has in the past, and it's not as crisp. It's catching the side wall, and it's not putting as much pressure, so his weight of stroke isn't as accurate as it used to be when he was, world champion, when he was winning and at his peak, in my opinion. Now there could be many reasons for that. I know he and Raneem had a child recently. I don't know if that's affected him in any way. That's obviously a wonderful, beautiful thing. It may have affected his squash depending on how much he's been training, but we don't know that. We're assuming that he's doing everything that he possibly can. So I think his fundamentals need to be a bit more accurate than they have been recently. And then his error rate has been really, really high. So in some of the matches I've been analyzing recently, I've noticed that when a lot of these players have a 3-to-1 winner to error ratio, they're usually doing quite well. In some of the matches I analyzed with Momen, against Asal, for example, his error rates are far higher than that. So he needs to be really mindful of his error rate. And that ties into the mindset, because sometimes if the rally gets a little bit extended, or Momen is at the back end of a rally, or his opponent is digging in a lot and they're applying pressure on him, Momen tries to do something that's not really there, or he tries to become too fine with his attacks, and that's when he starts clipping that tin. So that's something that we really need to watch out for with Momen. And then when it comes back to the accuracy and fundamentals, Momen loves to cut the ball, but sometimes when he cuts it, recently the ball's been floating to the front, and then it's not dying, so it's actually giving his opponent time to get there. In the past, the ball would float as well as be crisp, but when it would float, it would fade and die in the front. So let's just see how his hands and everything are feeling. And then on the flip side, with Youssef Ibrahim, he has phenomenal hands, he's fit, he moves well, etc. But I find that his patience is something that can sometimes be tested. So for him, it's also going to come down to errors. Is he trying to do too much when the opportunity isn't really there? That's something where it comes back to the mindset and the patience that he's going to be tested a little bit. So this will be an interesting match. The other interesting match is going to be between Marwan and Gregoire Marche. Now, Marwan has a 3-0 win record against him, 100%, but their last meeting was 2 years ago, and Marwan won that 3-1. But Gregoire Marche has played phenomenally well in the recent World Tour finals, where he won. He beat Makin in 3, Joel Makin, who's a phenomenal player, and he had really, really close 2-1 losses to Coll and Tarek Momen. Now, I find with Gregoire Marche, it's more about how positive he remains, and he was very positive in the World Tour finals recently. But for him, it's can he sustain that level of squash for 5 games? Because his game style, I find that he often ends up doing a ton of work, and then when he's made to work so much, that's when the errors start creeping in. That's when the structure gets lost a little bit. So the best of 3 format, I feel, actually suits him really, really well. I'm wondering whether he can sustain that physically and mentally for 5 games. And then on the flip side, we know Marwan is the jackal. He's so intelligent. He's so accurate. It's for him is going to be how well can he control the front court. And sometimes Marwan can be a little bit slow into the front corners off of the quick boasts and things. So depending on how well Marche is moving around the ball, how accurate he is with it, and how much Marwan is controlling that mid court, it could be a pretty interesting match as well. I'm assuming that Marwan is going to win his match and Momen is going to win his match. I don't think either of them are going to be easy per se, but I feel like they're going to come through. And that's going to line us up with a Marwan versus Tarek Momen match. So as you can see, Momen has the 8-1 advantage. So he's winning 89% of their encounters that have taken place so far. He's won the last 4 in a row. But the most recent encounter that they did have was a very tough 3-2 that Momen won 11-6 in the 5th. So that gives us an indication of the fact that this is probably going to be a pretty tough match. Now, the things to look for, like I said before, Momen's foundations, how crisp and accurate his attacking is, how good his length is, whether it's putting pressure or it's popping up, whether he's catching side wall or not. And then it's obviously his error ratio and his patience that are going to come in. And then Marwan, it's going to be about his mid-court control, because he doesn't really make too many errors. He usually plays a pretty patient game, but he picks his punches when he has them. So I feel like if he can stick to his basic game plan, it's probably going to be on Momen to say which Momen shows up. Is it going to be an error-riddled Momen who's maybe not as accurate with his fundamentals, or is it going to be the Momen of old and he's going to be attacking and be crisp? That's going to be a very, very interesting match. If Momen isn't accurate enough, I feel that Marwan is going to dominate the mid-court, and this match could go either way. I feel that Marwan might come out on top if Momen continues playing the way he has been playing recently, which has not been his best squash. If, however, Momen comes into this event playing the way he used to a few months ago or a year ago, it could be a very different outcome. So from here, let's look at the bottom half of the draw. So here it is, and as I mentioned, we're first going to look at the top quarter that you see in red on your screen of the bottom half. And these are the matches that are actually taking place today, these first round matches. And from here, I'm expecting Mazen Hesham to come out of his bracket and Karim Abdel Gawad to come out of his bracket. And I feel that this match is actually going to be a very, very, very interesting match, because not only is their record pretty close, 2-1 for Gawad. Their most recent meeting was in 2020, and Mazen Hesham actually won that 3-1. So interesting setup, but the more important thing is that as of late, Gawad has not been playing his best squash because he's had this foot injury. I believe it's the fat pad in his heel has been acting up. So for him to lunge with a lot of force actually becomes painful and very difficult. So his movement isn't the same as it used to be. So my real question is, can Gawad's body handle a long, tough match? Because Mazen Hesham likes to play with angles and attacks, so the Gawad's going to have to make quick movements on the boasts and the cross-court nicks and so on that might require hard lunges. So factor one, how does Gawad's body hold up? The other side of it is Mazen Hesham's mind and his execution. So he likes to do a lot of fancy stuff, and he hits a lot of his shots, but he also catches a lot of tin, or he doesn't execute it as effectively as he could, and the ball pops out, and then he's made to do work. So it's going to come down to his patience and structure and what his winner to error ratio looks like. If he can go in with the right mindset and be patient enough, knowing that Gawad's body might not be that strong, and if he can make the rallies a bit longer and play slightly higher percentage attacks and not try to go for the dead nick all the time, and maybe catch tin, in my opinion, there's a pretty strong chance that Mazen Hesham could beat Gawad and come out of this match ahead. And with that in mind, I'm putting Mazen Hesham on against Coll, who I believe is going to come out of the top. I don't think any of the players in this top half can really give Coll a super difficult time, just because his fitness, his movement, his basic game, and his the way he wins his points through counterattacks and kind of grinding his opponent down, and then they make errors. I don't think any of the players in this draw, they're phenomenal players here, but I don't think they're quite strong enough to beat Coll. So that leads me to think that Coll is going to play Mazen Hesham. Again, I don't know if this is going to pan out. I'm not laying bets on this, but this is just what I feel based on the recent history. Now, if Gawad's foot is fine and he's able to run around, I think he's going to beat Mazen Hesham. But that also makes me wonder, if his foot hasn't been fine, how much training has he been putting in? Is he fit right now? Has he been getting the match practice? Can he play at that pace? Like all these questions which we don't know the answer to. So now, over here, when we're looking at the Coll-Mazen Hesham matchup, they haven't played since 2019 when Coll won 3-1, and Coll's game has risen exponentially. He's become more consistent, more accurate, more deadly with his drops and his counter drops, and he's consistently challenging the top 3, 4, or 5 players in the world, and he's up there himself. So I feel that if Coll is as accurate as he generally has been with his attacks and his counterattacks, And the reason I'm saying that is because I noticed against Shorbagy in one of their recent matches in the World Tour Finals, or maybe it was before that, he did not play as accurately as he normally does when he was playing Shorbagy in particular. Maybe that was more in his mind that caused that to happen. But if his attacks are the way they normally are, I feel that unless Mazen Hesham is extremely patient and he's picking his punches and he's hitting his nicks and all of that stuff, I don't know if he has enough fitness to actually last as long as Paul Coll might make him last. So that's going to be interesting. If he opens up the court too much, Paul Coll's counterattacks are very strong. Mazen Hisham's going to have to do a lot of work, and it's probably going to end up taking a toll on him. So it's going to be interesting to see how accurate Coll is and whether Hesham can be patient enough and accurate enough with his attacks to not give Coll the opportunity to counterattack too much. So I'm thinking when it comes to this match, I have a feeling that Paul Coll is going to come out on top. Now, when we move to the second portion, the lowest quarter of the bottom half, I feel that this is the toughest section of the draw. It's crazy that these matches over here are going to be so early in the tournament, like way early in the tournament, where you're going to have Dessouky playing Mohamed Abouelghar, and then you're going to have Joel Makin against Mohamed Shorbagy. Like those are semi-final setups, almost quarters and semis right there. Joel Makin and Shorbagy have played semis and finals. Like it's crazy that it's this early. Now, when it comes to Fares and Abouelghar, the last time they met was in 2020. It was a best of 3 format, and Fares won 2-1, but it was a close 2-1. So a few factors that I was thinking about with this match is Abouelghar, in my opinion, has everything. He is super fast, super strong, super explosive. He hits crisply, he's accurate. But I feel like he loses his patience sometimes, and he makes a few too many errors sometimes. But then on the flip side, and Fares has become a lot better at what I'm about to say, but Fares used to get, mentally, he would kind of fall off a little bit. And when you play really, really strong players, they take advantage of those mental lapses like this. So it's going to be interesting to see how focused Fares is and also how focused Abouelghar is. Now, I feel that if both players come with, their A game or their A- game, whatever you want to say, this is going to be a phenomenal match. And I really don't know what's going to happen in this match because it depends who shows up. So, kind of saying that, I have the gut sense that Fares is going to come out because he has been playing very consistently and accurately and well recently. So I'm saying Fares. Now on the other side, like I said, you have Shorbagy and Joel Makin. The last 5 times they've played, it's been 3 matches to 2 matches for Shorbagy. And the last 2 times they played, it's been 1-1. And both times it went to 5. So kind of knowing that context, it's going to be interesting. But now when I think about Shorbagy's most recent event in the World Tour Finals, when he played Mustafa Asal in the final, he was gassed. And I've never seen Shorbagy like that. He himself, I think, said he's never felt like that before. So it's going to be interesting to see how Shorbagy feels physically, because Makin is fit, he's strong, he's accurate, he keeps the game in play, he'll attack, he'll counterattack. So the rallies are probably going to be extended. So let's see how Shorbagy's fitness comes out. Maybe he was unwell, I'm not sure. Hopefully he's back to his usual self. And then on the flip side, the thing to look out for Makin is he does a lot of stuff really well. It's going to come down to how accurate some of those drops and those counter drops are, how much pressure he can apply on Shorbagy and not be more on the retrieving end where he's just receiving the punishment and absorbing like a sponge. He needs to absorb but then also counter. So if he can get that mix right, I feel like Joel Makin could be a very, very challenging opponent, and obviously the stats show that. So again, I feel like it's going to be a phenomenal match. I can't say who's gonna win. My gut says Shorbagy is going to win, but it's just a guess. So assuming that Shorbagy comes out, you're going to end up with this match with Fares versus Shorbagy. And again, this is going to be awesome. So the last 2 times these guys played, they've split it 1-1. Both times the matches went to 4. Shorbagy won the most recent one in 2021. The time that Fares did win was in 2019. So there's been a bit of a gap. I feel, again, like I said, Shorbagy's fitness is going to play out, especially after his tough match with Joel Makin. So let's see how that pans out. And then the factor for Faris is going to be his mindset. I remember the last time these two played in a recent tournament, I believe it was the El Guna tournament, Faris didn't look like he was that hungry. He didn't look like he wanted to win that match. So maybe it's a mental thing against Shorbagy. Maybe it was mental fatigue that day. I don't know what it is. But that's going to be interesting to see how Faris's mindset is in that match. The other part is Faris's focus is always a bit of a question. It's become far better recently, so I'm assuming that he's overcome that hump of the mental lapses, the arguing with the referees and all of that sort of stuff, because he plays his best squash when he's not arguing. So let's see what happens over there. But I feel that in this one, I think that Shorbagy is going to come out ahead in this match again because of his experience. I think he has the mental edge on Faris as well. So let's see how the semis are lining up. I'm thinking that Ali Farag is going to end up playing Marwan Shorbagy. Shorbagy actually has the edge 7-4 in their historical record, and then the last three encounters, actually they played twice in the recent World Tour finals. Marwan won both matches, and he won in extra points. And the time before the World Tour finals, he also won 3-2, 11-8 in the fifth. So I feel that Farag has a tougher time playing Marwan than he does Mohamed. Marwan's a little bit craftier. He's a little bit wilier. He doesn't play at that higher pace the way Mohamed does oftentimes. Marwan plays a slightly slower pace, but he moves the ball around more. He has a few more holds. He does a few different things that I feel throw Farag's movement off a little bit, and it's not as rhythmical as the way Farag likes. So I feel like that's something that we got to look at, is how well and how effectively Marwan is controlling that midcourt, and how effectively he is changing those angles, putting those little holds in, changing the pace a little bit, things that are going to throw Farag's rhythm off. So that's something to look at. The physicality of Marwan's previous matches are going to play out a little bit as well, because Farag is quite fit. He loves to absorb. He loves to pick up all of the shots. So is that going to lead to Marwan maybe forcing the ball a little bit, making a few errors? We'll see. And then on the Farag side of the coin, it's how passive versus aggressive is he? And this is the question that always comes to my mind, because Farag moves phenomenally well. He has the ability to execute all the shots. The question is, how aggressive can he be, or how well does he find that balance between being passive and aggressive and just absorbing because that's his natural tendency, because he moves so well and it's easy for him, versus stepping up and actually being a little bit more aggressive. So this again promises to be a cracker of a match. You know, I'd like to say that Ali Farag is going to come through, but for some reason I have this gut feeling that Marwan Shorbagy is going to come through. I feel like if he does enough the way he typically does with the angles and all of that kind of stuff, he might frustrate Farag a little bit. And Farag's most recent performance in the World Tour finals wasn't his best. So I'm kind of putting those factors together, although history does not have any direct determination of what's going to happen in this tournament. A few weeks ago, Farag wasn't playing his best. It could have totally reversed, and he could be totally fresh and ready to go, in which case maybe it won't be Marwan, maybe it might be Farag. But just based on everything that's happened, I feel that Marwan might come out on top. Now, if we look at the bottom half, the semis are Coll against Mohamed, possibly. Mohamed has won 3 of the last 4 meetings, and these have all taken place since 2020. They've had tough matches, but Mohamed generally seems to be able to edge Coll out. But now, again, like I said, Mohamed is going to have a couple of hard matches based on the most recent tournament. We'll see what his physicality looks like. And then with Coll, the last time these guys played, Coll wasn't that accurate. He was a little bit passive. It was only right at the end before he lost the match that he really increased his accuracy on his drops and counter drops. So let's see if Coll can bring that game from the beginning of the match instead of near the end of the match. I genuinely feel that Coll doesn't do enough against Mohamed to be able to beat him, especially not consistently. So my thought is that Mohamed is probably going to come out of this match maybe 3-1, maybe 3-2, but I feel that Mohamed's probably going to come out of this match. So that takes us to the final. So I'm thinking it's either going to be a Farag versus Mohamed Shorbagy final, or maybe even a brother versus brother final, which would be pretty cool, to be honest. If it's Farag versus Shorbagy, Mohamed Shorbagy, well, Mohamed has won both their encounters since 2020, 3-1 and 2-1 in the best of three format, but it's always been a close match. And Farag's activity levels, like how proactive he is versus how defensive and passive he is, I feel like that's going to have a big impact. And then Mohamed's physicality, only based on the recent showing that he had, I feel are going to be pivotal factors. If the final is between the brothers, Marwan came out on top in their last two outings. Mohamed has the better record overall, but Marwan won the last two times they played, although one was in the recent 2 out of 3 format. So it's tough because both brothers know how they play. Both brothers have a pretty good sense of each other's mindset. So it'll just be very interesting to see how that match plays out. If you ask me to pick one player, I'm going to say that I feel that Mohamed El Shorbagy might be the winner. I feel that he has the most complete game. I'm assuming that he's gotten over whatever caused him to feel as physically drained as he was a few weeks ago. He's probably given himself the rest and the time. He's a professional. I feel like he has the most complete game. He's mentally probably one of the toughest players out there. I just feel like he's the package that's going to win this tournament. Now, we've had a long discussion, but I want to take you guys through a little summary of some considerations. And this is going to help you when it comes to your own thought process behind your matches. So when you think about matches and who's going to win and who's going to lose, there are several elements. There's the physical side of things, there's the tactical side of things, the mental side of things, and then there are uncontrollable factors. There are probably more, but I like to bucket it into these. So when you think about physical, there's your preparation. That comes down to your training. That comes down to your nutrition, your hydration. Are you peaking for the appropriate events? Are you tapering, which means lowering your training volume to have the most energy before the biggest events? That's something that at this level, these guys are probably pretty good at, but you never know. So the question is, who is doing this best to be optimally prepared for the event? And then maintaining that throughout the event. Then there's the physicality and timing of previous matches. So sometimes a match might be scheduled to start at 9 p.m., but it starts at 11. You don't finish till 1 in the morning. Well, that's going to have an impact on your routine, your sleep schedule, your energy levels. And those are some of the uncontrollables. Then there's the mindset. So are you coming out aggressively and hungry? And I have the hunger as number 8. But are you coming out aggressively and hungry and wanting to win? And then there's the other side of the mindset, which is, if I'm seated 5th and I reach the semis, I've suddenly beaten my seeding. Am I now going to become subconsciously, am I going to become passive because I've exceeded my expectations? Sometimes that happens. It happens to a lot of players. I don't know if it happens that much to the players at this level, at the top of the game, but it happens to most people. So that's something to think about. The fourth one is the basic game accuracy. Squash is built on hitting your targets and applying pressure in the back of the court, squeezing your opponent on the side wall. So some players, like Tarek Momen, for example, recently has not been hitting his targets and applying the same pressure as he used to with his basic game. And if we're not applying that same pressure, the player who does apply that pressure and whose basics are that much tighter, even if it's 5% tighter, they're going to generate 5% more opportunities. They're going to be able to win 5% more of the points, and that's going to be the difference between winning and losing at that level. Then there's a winner to error ratio, and this based off of, I've only done this with a small sample of matches, but I've looked and I've noticed that there's this general 3-to-1 winner to error ratio, and any player who ends up hitting 3 winners for every 1 error that they hit in a particular game usually ends up winning. So there's that winner to error ratio and how active one player is. So if you hit 2 winners and 1 error, that's only really 3 times that you've dictated the outcome of the rally. That's probably not enough activity, but that means you're being too passive. So if you are being active enough and you have a 3-to-1 winner to error ratio, it seems like that might be a trend to winning games, at least at that level. Then number 6 is again about mindset. Are players arguing with referees, or are they staying focused on the match? How are they grounding themselves? How are they doing all those things that we've talked about in previous videos? Number 7, is the squash free flowing, or is there a lot of start-stop, blockages, traffic issues? some of the different playing styles suit certain players and they don't suit other players. So depending on how that pans out, it could affect one person positively, another negatively. So Marwan, for example, Shorbagy is fine with a start-stop, a little bit of body contact here and there, but some other player doesn't like that at all, and they want the rally to continue to go. So we'll see how that plays out. I already talked about number 8. Number 9, some off-court circumstances, and specifically the family circumstances. Both Tarek, Momen, and very, very recently Ali Farag, they both had kids. So that could be a very, very positive source of inspiration, and you almost feel like you have no pressure because you've now come in touch with something that's maybe bigger than squash. So that could be a very positive source of inspiration for both players, or it could be something that detracts from their squash because they haven't been able to focus and concentrate as much on their training. So I don't know what their personal circumstances are, but that's something to consider. And then there are the court conditions. So really, really hot, bouncy courts sometimes suit the attritional player, whereas cooler and especially glass courts suit someone who likes to attack a little bit more. So especially in the early rounds where some more of the matches are being played on the traditional courts, that could impact some of the outcomes of the matches. And then number 11 are players. This is one that players at that level usually have a pretty good handle on. It's more for amateurs and lower level players where do you have suitable tactics for your opponent, and can you adjust your tactics if they are not working? So that's something that you guys can think about with your own matches. And then the 12th one is luck, and maybe someone's having a good day. So maybe you get that lucky bounce. You get that lucky bounce a couple of times. You catch the nick a couple of extra times. Maybe you know those 2-3 points throughout a match could be the difference between a 12-10 win in the 5th or a 12-10 loss in the 5th. And then that also comes down to a good day. Sometimes you get out and you're just feeling phenomenal, and nothing can go wrong, and everything's just going perfectly. So if a player has that day, Mohamed Shorbagy could lose to he could lose to Gregoire Marche if Gregoire Marche is having that kind of a day. So that's something to think about as well. So folks, thanks for sticking with me through this in-depth review of the draw on the men's side. I hope that you found value in this. I'd love to hear your thoughts if you have any agreement or disagreement with anything, any other factors you think are important. I'd love to hear from you. Have a wonderful day. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, share it with your family and friends, whoever is into squash. We'd love for you to participate. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video.